And we are live, and I'm super excited to be here today. It's a very special day. It's FFC's fourth birthday, which is crazy. As you know, as founders, it goes by so quickly, and all of a sudden you turn around and you've been in business for 4 years, and that's what today feels like. But huge celebration, and can't think of anybody better to celebrate it with but Candace Nelson, somebody who I look up to as an extraordinary entrepreneur, an extraordinary person, and somebody who's so generous and willing to share her hard-won knowledge with us today. But I also have a few other things to announce because Female Founder Collective has been up to a lot this year, and especially the past couple months. So I'm going to share those things, and then I will get right to it because I know you're all here to hear from Candace. Her sage advice. So, as you may have heard by now, we're thrilled to announce our new mentorship program, The North, in partnership with WebEx, who is contributing mentor hours, tech, and more alongside Female Founder Collective in our mission to support female-founded businesses. And in celebration, FFC announced a powerful new grant opportunity to help elevate ambitious women on the rise. We've selected 7 finalists to participate in the pitch event. It's on September 21st, and they have the opportunity to receive a $20,000 grant, as well as hear from our phenomenal judges. We have a VC, we have our very own Rebecca Minkoff, as well as the CMO of WebEx, actually giving advice and opinions and helping them to hone their pitch. So definitely join us. If you go to https://femalefoundercollective/events. We'll also put it in the chat. You can register there. And WebEx, again, is our exclusive launch partner for the North and the launch of this grant and the pitch event, allowing FFC members access to a wide range of WebEx tools and solutions, including video meetings, calling, messaging, and virtual event solutions designed for hybrid collaboration, allowing for mentors and FFC members to connect from anywhere in the world, which is really an amazing thing about how COVID has pushed us into the future of work. And we're also thrilled to, on the 10th House front, be partnering with WebEx to host all of our events, in addition to these one-on-one advisor sessions and our membership programming. And on top of this exciting news, again, I mentioned it's the 4th anniversary of FFC. And one note there, we are doing a flash sale or flash discount, I should say, in honor of our birthday for our next cohort, which launches in October. And then one final piece of housekeeping, we have Female Founders Day coming to Los Angeles in November. So we're actually going to pop our link into the chat so that you can get more information about that. But without further ado, I'm going to go into Candace, who is a serial entrepreneur, a New York Times bestselling author, Wall Street Journal contributor, and expert in turning one's passion into a profitable business, everyone's dream. Her book, Sweet Success, A Simple Recipe for Turning Your Passion into Profit, will be published by HarperCollins Leadership in November of 2022, but you can actually buy it now. If you'd like, you can start pre-ordering. Is that right, Candace?
That's right. Head to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and place your pre-orders. I would appreciate it.
Definitely do that because it's going to go fast. But she revolutionized the baking industry when she left a career in finance to start Sprinkles, the world's first cupcake bakery and cupcake ATM, adding pounds to many people's bodies, including mine. Nelson followed with the launch of Pizzana, also another incredible restaurant concept that I actually frequent. It's a growing chain of Michelin Bib Gourmand awarded pizzerias, leading the third wave of pizza in the US. She continues to expand her portfolio of investments as well with CN2 Ventures and lives in Los Angeles with her husband, her 2 sons, and her Norwich Terrier, Willie. So I'm so excited to start this conversation, get into the meat of it, because I know you have so much to offer. But in your book, you talk about the key ingredients of a successful business. And everyone really wants to know, is there a formula, right? And And what are sort of those go-to moves as a serial entrepreneur that you take to each business to set yourself up for success?
So, first of all, I want to say I didn't realize we were celebrating a birthday here today. 4 years. Happy birthday. I'm sorry I didn't bring
I
cupcakes
had
for
my
female.
cupcake here with the
No,
candle. I didn't think.
I didn't bring my usual goodie bag of cupcakes. I'm sorry about that. I'll send you some later. But, as the title of my new book suggests, obviously, I believe passion is a key component in any business. I really think that it's kind of your fuel, right? Obviously, we spend so many hours of the day, at work. If you're a small business owner or entrepreneur, times that by 2 or 3. And we want to be passionate about what we're doing, but it's not just about us loving what we do. It's about the fact that we are fueling so many other people, right? If we have a passion that's burning inside of us, that's fueling our day to day, we're able to pass that along to our customers who are feeling it, and then passing that along through organic marketing. We're able to hire the best employees because it's infectious, right?
Yeah.
And I think that also, mindset is such a key piece. I mean, it comes way before the idea. In fact, the right mindset can help you land the right idea, right? Because you have to be sort of open to that opportunity. You need to start sort of exercising that muscle in your brain of problem solving, leaning into frustration. But mindset goes well beyond that. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, we are we have to be resilient, right? Because we come up against so many more no's than we ever hear a yes. And, we could be in the fetal position all day in the corner. But an entrepreneur will pick themselves right back up and keep, plodding along until they hear that yes. Turn that no into a yes. In fact, the first Sprinkles location, after having been hung up on by several landlords who thought my idea was ridiculous, I went back to one who had initially said no and turned that into a yes. So I believe you have to be resilient and keep at it. And then also, obviously you want to land that perfect idea. It helps if it's the right timing. And but I think even more important than the idea is the action, taking that leap, right? When I first opened Sprinkles, I was standing behind the counter. I was so proud of what I'd built. Everyone was coming in and marveling. But there were so many people that also came in and said, this was my idea. And it just sort of resonated with me in that, at first I was kind of like, oh, I felt like something was being taken from me, but really that's not it. It really sort of shined a light on the difference between someone who might have the idea and not do anything with it versus someone who does take the first step.
I love that. I think it's so true, the power of just executing and doing. And I think a lot of times also as entrepreneurs, you are passionate about something and you end up being a perfectionist about it as
Mm,
well, and then never actually taking that leap.
that's
So
right. Don't let perfectionism get in the way of action, or perfect be the enemy of good. I mean, all those expressions out there, take them to heart.
I want to actually go and sort of ask you about how you've turned that initial no into a yes, because it's, again, like you said, there's sort of that point with a lot of founders, and you talked about resilience and being able to pick yourself up. But what is persistence versus resilience, and how do you flip the conversation
Mhm.
perhaps and turn those no's into a yes?
I think as an entrepreneur, you have a vision that the rest of the world doesn't see, right? And so you have to be out there with that passion, with that fuel, illustrating that vision for other people because they don't necessarily have that mindset that we've all honed to see the world in a new way, to see possibilities that other people don't see. So I think it really comes down to, and this actually plays into my parenting, my boys as well. Like a lot of times they'll sort of say, well, you wouldn't let me do that anyway. And I'm like, no, 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 make a case for it. You never know. Try to change my mind. You can't be, don't play into the victim mentality, and everything that's worth doing is hard. So you've got to hone those skills about telling that story, sharing that vision in a way, painting that picture in a way that people can understand it and they buy into it too.
Did you bring him a cupcake? Were you like,
I'm
try
sure,
these?
yes. Oh my God, plenty of cupcakes. Are you kidding me? That was my currency back in the day. I would just, if people were like questioning my idea, I'd just be like, here, taste one.
That's amazing. So let's actually talk about that, because you were known for your signature cupcake design. You took something that can be seen as mundane or, commoditized. Like you said, so many people walked in and said, this was my idea, and you elevated it. So what was the thought process behind the branding of the cupcakes and sort of that initial creation of like, here is my product, from here's the cupcake, and then this is what I want the storefront to look like, and eventually the ATM.
Mm-hmm. So I think I was coming from the world of investment banking and technology. I was an early dot-com boom employee before I was a dot-com bust out of work employee. And so I sort of approached the bakery world through this different set of eyes, right?
Yeah.
Coming from the technology world. And so I really approached it with innovation in mind. And you're right, cupcakes were, sold in the supermarket. There was no brand associated with cupcakes, with maybe the exception of Hostess, right?
Yeah.
But there was nothing elevated about that. And so I really wanted to reinvent the cupcake from the inside out and think about it innovatively and ultimately trademark or protect it in some way. And that led to the trademarking of the decorative design on top, the modern dot, which, most people aren't going into the bakery world thinking about like
Trademarking.
IP, any of that. And that's what I mean by seeing, things through entrepreneurial eyes. It's like you want to exercise that mindset to see things in a new and different way. But ultimately, I knew that I was working with sort of a generic product. And I thought, how am I going to protect this? What is the moat I'm going to build around my product that is essentially anyone can make this in their kitchen? I mean, my kids can make this.
Yeah.
And so I thought I have to own something here, and I have to lean into brand because I want people to stomach being able to pay $3 for a cupcake when they had been used to paying 75 cents. But B, like, feel differently about it, like understand the difference between this cupcake and all the rest, and be able to, look at a dessert buffet of cupcakes and know which ones were the sprinkles.
Yeah. And it's amazing that you were able to protect that, right? So it was the design of it. Was it also, did you have a custom recipe that you never sort of gave out? It was a secret. What were some of the other ways that you were able to ensure nobody would copy it and sort of take it out?
That's really hard to do in the restaurant business. You can't really protect your recipes, except for the fact that you build a really loyal team.
Yeah.
That was speaking of perfectionism getting in the way of progress. I was that person early on in Sprinkles. I thought, this is my baby. I can't entrust it to anyone else. And I almost killed myself, working 18-hour days, sleeping with an apron as my pillow because I, for some reason, thought I couldn't pass the torch to anyone else. The day that I hired my baker, who ultimately was with us for, I want to say 10 years, was the happiest day of my life. And he, let me tell you what, he would leave at the end of the day out the back alley, and he would have people offering him $100 bills for my recipes, right?
Wow.
And he could have very well said, sure, why not?
Yeah.
But he didn't. And that it doesn't come about from any sort of non-disclosure or any other protection other than the fact that you've built a great company culture and team.
And talking about company culture and team, because I think that's obviously, and I'm sure you talk about this in the book, such a central ingredient to success. How do you think about your hiring practices? Like, how did you determine who is my first hire? How do I scale this, right? How do I take this magic of the first location, of the first cupcake, and make it bigger?
Yeah, scaling, is something we all dream of. But then once you get there, you're like, okay, how am I going to do this and not lose the magic, the initial magic of that first location? Because for anyone who ever went to that first Sprinkles location back in the day, there was a literal like magnetic energy to it. I mean, we were so bustling and, there was barely any room. It was 600 square feet. Like we could barely get by. People were frosting arm to arm. There were celebrities waiting in line, which by the way, celebrities never wait in line. But so I really I am not a great manager.
Amazing to know
I
your
am
strengths and weaknesses.
good to know your strengths and weaknesses. And fortunately, I have a co-founder, my husband, who is great at managing people. I love people, but I'm not a great manager. And so my style really is to hire tough and manage loosely. But part
Yeah.
of what that means is you have to hire people who buy into your vision, right? If you're aligned in terms of your brand values, in terms of your mission, in terms of your purpose, like that's someone who's going to stick around. That's someone who's loyal. That's someone who is going to, pass that vision along to your customers, and also build a great team beneath them as well.
So from day one, you recommend really figuring out what is your value set, what's important to you, and what are your sort of deal breakers when it comes to talent.
Absolutely. I think if you brand really is, it's not a logo, right? It's not a font. That's your brand identity. Brand is really how your product lives in the hearts and minds of your customers. And so that sounds kind of like amorphous. What does that mean, really? It means like, what do you stand for? What are you trying to do in the world? And building from there. And
Yeah.
when you start at that place, like for Sprinkles and with Pizzana, it's about connection, it's about joy, it's about delight, it's about taking food and products that people thought they knew, right? They have a warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feeling, but then transforming them into something surprising. And so that shapes everything I do. I mean, the whole idea of the cupcake ATM, which I thought was going to be just a fun, gimmicky marketing idea, came about because I thought, how can we now, move the needle and surprise and delight our customers even more? So not only is it about, making that connection with your customers and your team, but it's also about how you innovate. If you
Right.
don't know who you are or where you're going,
It's
how
hard
are
to.
you going to get there?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about. I'm going to jump to creating brand evangelists, because I think that's something
Mm,
you've been particularly known for, so good at. And on the personal branding side, you've created also an intimate relationship with you,
mm.
right? Where people know you as the founder of Sprinkles, as the founder of Pizzana. How do you create a personal brand, and sort of how did you
Mhm.
start thinking about this in relationship to your business? And what sorts of resources or time did you put towards that as a founder?
So I reluctantly came to embrace my own personal brand, but it ultimately became such a driving force for our brand.
Yeah.
I was sort of the baker in back with my, baseball hat on, and then the media would show up, and they'd be like, "We need to talk to someone." And I was like looking around, like, "I guess that's going to be me."
Yeah.
But there was, I was operationally like,
In it.
deep in the
Yeah.
business. There was no time for glam. There was no time for anything. So it just started as, like out of necessity, right? The
Yeah.
brand needed a spokesperson. And then what I realized was people loved our product, but they craved a deeper connection. It's like, when you love something so much, you want to know more. You want to hear the story behind it. You want to know the person behind it. And, part of being in a retail store is that you get to deliver that story authentically to your customer base on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
And so people would have the cupcakes and they would get really curious. They'd say like, "Well, where did you come from? And where did these recipes come from? Were they your grandmother's?" And people wanted to know more. And that's when I realized like I could actually really amplify the Sprinkles brand by stepping into my own personal brand. And ultimately, I mean, this was a pre-Instagram world, so the social media avenue wasn't available to me yet. But TV came calling. Actually, I ended up on a show called Cupcake Wars, and then Sugar Rush. And so, across on screens across America,
Yeah.
every week there was my face with my brand name under it, and I became known as the Queen of Cupcakes, which was very important because even though what we had done initially was very innovative, when you're successful, emulation, competition, even copycats will follow. And
Right.
so, even though we had sort of come out of nowhere doing something really different, all of a sudden it was a crowded field. So, how are we going to continue to raise the bar and differentiate ourselves?
And then you've also done an incredible job of creating brand evangelists, right?
Mm.
And I know I nodded to this earlier. How do you give your customers the tools to be those brand evangelists, go out, talk about it, share the love. And how do you help sort of keep their loyalty and guarantee that they'll also be an advocate versus an adversary?
Well, sprinkles early on, this was again a pre-Instagram world. So we relied on earned media, so PR, but
Yeah.
ultimately we didn't have money for a publicist when we first started. So it was word of mouth. And word of mouth still to this day, no matter what industry you're in, you could be in the technology industry. Word of mouth is the holy grail of marketing because it's free and it's viral and people trust a recommendation from a friend more than anyone else. So we were super lucky to have that word of mouth. And that really came about because we were able to share a story, right? I believe in the power of storytelling. If you can really package your product and your brand in a way that is digestible, that is a story that people get excited to tell and share and pass along, you're helping them do your marketing for you. So I really believe in that. And then it's also about trust. People don't want to pass along a recommendation for something that they don't intrinsically trust, they're not sure about yet. So you need to make sure that you're delivering on your brand promise every day. And that takes consistency. It doesn't happen overnight, just like any sort of relationship with trust. And if you do, if you kind of don't deliver on your brand promise once or twice, you need to course correct really fast and make sure you step up to the plate and do whatever you need to do to get their trust back. But I think that also means, that you're showing up everywhere because there's so many touch points for a brand now. You have to be showing up everywhere consistently, not, you're one person on TikTok and you're another person in your email marketing campaign. It's like people want to know who you are across all those touch points. So it's consistency, authenticity, and trust, and ultimately delivering a story that your customers can and want to share with others.
And Candace, did you do that through having investing from an operational perspective in a customer service team, or did you, train the people that were behind, I don't even know what you call it, behind the bakery case, behind the
Yeah,
cupcake
counter, yeah.
behind the counter. Did you train them to sort of react in a certain way? Were there sort of go-to customer service tactics or responses that you had, i.e., if somebody orders their cupcakes and they don't like them, do you refund them? Do
Mm-hmm.
you send them another batch to try to win them back? What were some of the tactical things that you did relating to that?
Absolutely. So, for sure, training is key. And I think also giving your employees a lot of autonomy and independence to be able to make a situation right. There's nothing more frustrating than feeling like something's been mishandled or you're upset about something and hearing, I'm going to have to, refer you to my manager. It's just like, I don't know why, but that's incredibly irritating. Like, why can't you
For the
just
employee too? It's very discouraging for them.
Right. Like, why am I not being trusted to handle this? So, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There was that customer service. Like, we really empowered our employees
Yeah.
to handle and take charge of any situation. And, because customer came first.
Yeah.
And then we also invested in technology, really a lot of money, given that we were a bakery, in technology, because at the end of the day, it's about efficiency and being able to deliver your product sometimes
Yeah.
as seamlessly as possible. Sometimes people don't want to talk to a person, obviously more and more so these days. So really investing in a custom website where people could mix and match and customize their flavors. And that was something that we really invested in as well. So technology to make your customers' lives easier.
And it also opened up probably new customer categories for you, in that you might be not be coming into the bakery and getting one cupcake, but I always got them for gifting purposes, and you were
Yes.
able to write messages on them, so it was this perfect sweet gift that you could send to people. So really smart on that front. I want to go back to profit because, of course, no business is a business if it's not
Mhm.
profitable.
Mhm.
And you really achieved the holy grail of being able to create the successful brand that you took, to the next level, right? You took a cupcake and you made it absolutely beautiful and something that people cherished. So,
Mhm.
How did you do that? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you thought about profitability and running the actual business, especially coming from a finance background?
Of course, of course. I mean, part of what we did was really, well, essentially what we did was reinvent this cupcake. But as part of that, we also reinvented its price. So for the first 6 months that we were in business, number one question we answered, why are your cupcakes so expensive? But this all comes back to brand and what we were creating. And you said so yourself. You relied on sprinkles for gifts.
Yeah,
Before sprinkles, people weren't sending around cupcakes as a gift. Probably
yeah,
back in the day, they were making cupcakes and delivering them to a neighbor. But we're in a new age where not everybody has time to do that. But we developed a brand and created a brand that was considered so special that instead of sending a beautiful bouquet, you could send sprinkles cupcakes, and they were equally delightful, if not more so,
more.
right?
You get to
More.
eat them.
Thank you. Yes, you can eat them, you can share them. And I think about this a lot because, well, I'm obviously such a brand person, but I think, as we go into this, who knows what we're going into, whether it's a recession or not. I think, with inflation, people are starting to cut certain things out of their spending budget, right?
Yeah,
And we live in an Amazon world, right? If you're trying to compete on price, first of all, those customers are fickle.
yeah,
But secondly, that's really hard to do, right?
yeah,
So for me, it's about a brand that people don't want to cut out of their budget, right? They care for it so much. It's so special to them and it's so meaningful. It's so like it improves their life in such a special way that they'll keep the sprinkles or the pizzana in their budget, but maybe cut something else out.
yeah. I would say $3 for happiness is
Small price to pay. And
small price.
really the idea with Beverly Hills was that so many people were craving this sort of, Beverly Hills lifestyle. And I would see people, on Rodeo Drive, not many of them with shopping bags because guess what? Most people can't afford that.
Yeah,
A designer bag for several $1,000s, but you could come in, most people can come in and get a $3 cupcake and have that same association.
yeah. I love that. So it was basically increasing that price so that you were able to afford to create those special experiences that ultimately you offered and was part of your brand promise.
That's right. And also making with brand, I think your customers become price inelastic, right? They aren't as they know it's special. So if the price varies a little bit here or there, they get it. They're willing to assume that cost because it's meaningful enough to them.
Amazing. So I want to also talk about fragmentation because there's so many competing ways to get customers today. And I know that you talked about the importance of word of mouth.
Mhm.
What do you think about what channels to pursue and how to invest in each as like an early stage founder
Mhm.
and particularly as a bootstrapping founder because a lot of our founders bootstrap and they don't have the budget to like go out and acquire customers.
Absolutely. Sprinkles was day one built on an email newsletter, Daily Candy. I don't know if you remember it, but it
Yeah.
went out on day one. And let me tell you, those people were lined up. And I still believe in the power of email marketing. And when you are bootstrapping and you're just starting out, you have to take stock of what you have. Okay. And most people have a email list of some sort. It might just be your friends, it might just be your family, but you can start there. And as much as I love social media, I love Instagram, I'm now all over TikTok. It's super fun, creative. I mean, you ultimately you don't own those customers, you don't own that information. And no matter what you're putting out there, the algorithm is dictating who sees it. Very frustrating, right? When you're a marketer.
Notice
So
your reach can be a quarter of what it was.
yeah, overnight. And
Yeah.
you had nothing to do. You're just a victim, right?
Yeah.
So as much as I believe that's a free channel that we should all be using and telling stories on and showing behind the scenes and getting people engaged, I still think email marketing is the key and also now SMS marketing,
Yeah.
right? It's this more direct relationship that you have with your customers. It builds loyalty and you ultimately own it.
Yeah. I so agree with that. I feel very old school and I'm always like, let's build up our email list. It's the only thing that you can control and that gives you insight into who your customer is. So I
It's a
love that.
classic for a reason.
Yes. And I want to now talk about how supportive you are of other founders
No.
and why you think it's important to be an advocate and an advisor for fellow entrepreneurs, and what are some of your favorite topics to advise on. And then I'm going to give, after you answer that, I want to ask one question from the audience and then we'll wrap.
Okay, great. Well, I found my first entrepreneurial journey to be quite lonely and scary. And
Yeah.
I was just saying to you before we got on here, like, if I had only had Female Founder Collective back then, my experience would have been so different. We hear a lot about mental health issues and burnout associated with entrepreneurship, and with good reason, right? Back in the day, I kind of thought it was like me against the world, right? I thought like having a network of support was really for people back in the corporate world. And wow, was I wrong. And particularly when I woke up one day and I'd had my child and I looked around and I was like, I literally have no friends. I don't have anyone to call to
Your
ask
head's
about
down.
breastfeeding or how I'm going to hire that next, employee. So having that support is so important. I'm so happy that there are so many more resources now, but I also love mentoring and giving back to female founders who are trying to do it. But I only have so much time. And so that's why I've written the book Sweet Success, because I want to have this larger platform to be able to make a difference, to kind of encourage people on their path if they've already started, or get that, business idea that's on the back burner off the back burner onto the front burner and go for it.
Well, I love that. And we all feel your generosity and your support from near and far. If you don't mind, I do, speaking of your time, I know it's super valuable, have one more question
Yeah, sure.
from the audience, where we had somebody ask, what type of role do you recommend for a first full-time hire?
Well, I'd say it depends on your business, but I believe the operations side of the business, if you can have that dialed in, it's like I remember a chef, and I'm not assuming that you have a retail or restaurant business, but I will use this analogy. There was a chef back in the day that said, it doesn't matter how good your menu is, how many TV shows your celebrity chef has been on, if your air conditioning is not working, no one's eating at your restaurant. And I think that applies to everything. It's like, if your website is down, you're not selling any, it doesn't matter how beautiful the photo shoot was, you're not selling any clothes today. So someone who can be that, and operations responsibilities varies wildly by company, by industry, but ultimately they're the ones that make sure everyone's getting paid and that the lights are on and everyone has a Wi-Fi connection and all the important stuff that like can take up so much mind share in a founder's mind, when you really need to be working on the vision of the company.
Love that. And so agree. We have an amazing operator at FFC. Well, thank you, Candace. This is so appreciated. Again, as a reminder, The North, our platform for mentorship and advising, is launching this fall. It's actually going to be next month. So go to findyournorth.co to sign up, and follow us on social at findyournorth_ to learn more. And don't forget to RSVP to our pitch event. Again, the 10th house.femalefoundercollective.com/events. And thank you all for joining us. Bye, Candace. Have a great weekend.
Bye, Allie. Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Friday.